ago, in the year 1991, India was facing a lot of problems with regard to its economy. Desperate actions needed to be taken. The financial minister and the prime minister sat together and discussed this grave situation one day.
Sir, our country is going through a major economic crisis. We are having a huge trade deficit. Import prices are going up. Exports are declining. We have a huge revenue deficit. Many of our public sector undertakings are running into high losses and shortage of funds to fuel growth, and also we are facing huge foreign debts. Hyperinflation. Our foreign exchange reserve is just 1.2 billion US dollars, which can help us sustain essential imports for just 3 weeks.
This is alarming. We should take desperate measures now. We should devise an economic policy by which we can resolve this problem.
I feel we should open up the economy and no longer keep it reserved. Even the IMF is ready to sanction loans to us only if we open our economy.
I see. We should take necessary actions. What exactly should we do?
I feel we should globalize our economy. Globalization will help in resolving all the current problems piling up on us.
What is globalization?
Globalization describes the process by which regional economies, societies, and cultures have become integrated through communication, transportation, and trade. In simple words, we need to integrate our domestic economy with the world economy. It will facilitate global trade and better interactions with the other countries of the world. Globalization has more of capitalistic approach, where investment in the country would trigger growth and employment opportunities.
But this would require a lot of structural changes. How do we go about it?
1. First, we need to attract foreign investment. This can be done by lowering barriers and removing business restrictions for multinational companies. This in turn would reduce our fiscal deficit. 2. This would encourage entrepreneurship and foster employment in the economy. 3. Our exports should be diversified. We shouldn't restrict our exports to only food grains, but we encourage outsourcing as we have relative cheap labor cost. 4. Globalization is an outcome of privatization and liberalization. So, encouraging private firms and creating a free trade environment would help. 5. Globalization is usually recognized as being driven by a combination of economic, technological, socio-cultural, political, and biological factors. So the concerned ministries should also be intimidated.
Okay. I feel we should go ahead with this policy. It is history in the making of the Indian economy. It has been 3 years since we have implemented liberalization, privatization, and globalization scheme. Kindly update me of it and its impact on the economic sectors.
The impact of globalization can be reviewed for the following sectors of economy. Agriculture. The farmers who have got exposure to global links of markets, technology, and investment benefited in terms of improving their yields, getting better prices, and secured offtake. Their produce can now cater to the need of a larger market with a lot of demand inflows. But on the flip side, due to export-oriented policies in agriculture, there has been a shift of production from the domestic market mainly to export-oriented cash crops. Thus, there was a shift of focus by the agricultural industry from food grains to cash crops. This puts pressure on prices of food grains. Public investment in agriculture sector, especially in infrastructure, which includes irrigation, power, roads, market linkages, research and extension, has been reduced in the reform period. The contribution of agriculture to the overall GDP has decreased visibly. Industry. The Indian industry has faced a deep impact from these policies. Increased competition has led to better services and increase in consumer confidence. Privatization of PSUs has led to efficient running of industry, growth in infrastructure, and industry discipline. The revenues too have increased as a result of tax generation because of the advent of new companies. The standard of living of people has increased and quality products have hit the market. Technological advancement has facilitated domestic firms to compete with MNCs. A lot of new employment opportunities have been created. On the other hand, small industries and cottage industries have faced a severe setback. They couldn't withstand the competition, and hence the industry had to be closed down. Cheaper imports have thus replaced the demand for domestic goods. Domestic manufacturers are facing competition from imports. The working conditions are stressful. Profits have been the main view of the industry, rather than welfare. Growth of industries too have led to environmental worries. Resources have been utilized carelessly. Disinvestments. More PSUs have been disinvested further. All the earlier privatized companies showed magnificent result. It was also generating a large amount of revenues to the government and also increasing consumer confidence. But all this came at a cost. Critics point out that the assets of PSUs have been undervalued and sold to the private sector. This means that there has been a substantial loss to the government. Moreover, the proceeds from disinvestment were used to offset the shortage of government revenues rather than using it for the development of PSUs and building social infrastructure in the country. The whole motive of PSUs was to have economic welfare, but that transcended into a strictly profit motive industry with disregard to economic welfare.
Thank you for the overview of our economy. We should look ahead to better developmental policies.
So as we stand 20 years from these reforms, these changes have brought about a massive change and has helped India to be one of the front-running economies. The service sector has grown and contributes around 60% of the GDP. Growth in the service sector represents growth of an economy. The growth rate of India has been consistent at 6 to 9% for last 10 years. Thus, even though globalization had its own costs, we can conclude that the advantages outweigh the disadvantages and the reforms were revolutionary for the Indian economy. As Amartya Sen and many others have pointed out, that India as a geographical, politico-cultural entity has been interacting with the outside world throughout history and still continues to do so. It has to adapt, assimilate and contribute. This goes without saying, even as we move into what is called a globalized world, which is distinguished from previous eras by faster travel and communication, greater trade linkages, denting of political and economic sovereignty, and greater acceptance